What's up everybody, I'm David with the Reef Aquarium Shop. Over the next few weeks I will be introducing a new series of videos on setting up your first saltwater aquarium, from the different types of tanks to dispelling some of the myths surrounding saltwater fish keeping, to filtration, cycling, and eventually adding fish. So without further ado, let's get started. To start, I want to distinguish between two popular types of saltwater aquariums. The first type is probably what you might think of when you think of a saltwater tank, and that is a reef tank. A reef tank is one that houses live corals, usually along with live rock, fish, and invertebrates. Corals can create incredibly vivid and beautiful scenes that mimic what you might see in nature. While beautiful, corals can be challenging to keep successfully for beginners, and the price range might deter some folks from keeping them, especially if you've never kept saltwater before. A good introduction to saltwater fish keeping is the next type of tank I want to talk about, which is the fish only with live rock setup, or the Fowler setup. A Fowler setup describes itself. It's a saltwater aquarium that does not contain live corals, only fish and live rock. You can still create beautiful scenes without live corals that are beginner friendly, and you can always transition a Fowler setup to a reef tank as you gain more experience. Now, if you're like me, you probably have some predisposed opinions about saltwater that may or may not necessarily be true. I want to talk about the biggest myths surrounding saltwater fish keeping. The first is that saltwater is too difficult to keep compared to freshwater. While some complex reef systems can be incredibly advanced, the same can be said for heavily planted freshwater tanks that require CO2 and nutrient dosing. As with freshwater, a system can be as complex or as simple as you make it. For a Fowler setup, like the one we will start building in this video series, the main components you need are live rock, live sand, and adequate filtration. While you might not be familiar with live rock and live sand yet, a Fowler system having just a few main components shows that saltwater fish keeping does not necessarily need to be overly difficult. The next biggest myth surrounding saltwater is that saltwater tanks are super expensive to keep and maintain. Kind of like I mentioned before, these tanks can be as low cost or expensive as you make them. While livestock and equipment for saltwater tanks can be on the steeper side, there are ways to mitigate costs and get the most bang for your buck while still having a beautiful and successful aquarium. While there are myths that saltwater aquariums are too difficult and too expensive to maintain, a good answer to these myths for a beginner is an all-in-one aquarium. An all-in-one aquarium is just that. It contains all the filtration and equipment needed within the aquarium instead of underneath the tank or hanging on the back. These tanks are good for beginners because they take a lot of the guesswork out of starting up a new tank, and you can save some money by getting everything together instead of piecing it out. For this video series, we will be using the AquaTop 40-gallon all-in-one. We carry these in the shop, and they come in a 24-gallon variety as well. This tank is made of glass and contains a glass lid, multi-stage all-in-one filtration, a protein skimmer, return pump, a 30-watt light, as well as the stand. So here's the view of the back of the tank, which shows why it's called an all-in-one. Water enters this back chamber through a pre-filter sponge, which will catch any large debris. From there, it enters the protein skimmer, which is a piece of equipment that removes fish waste and other organic matter from your water so that it doesn't foul up the tank. Next, water goes through several media chambers, the first being activated carbon, then nitrate and phosphate removing media, and finally, ceramic biological media. Lastly, the water is pumped back into the aquarium with the included return pump. So this has been just a general overview of saltwater tanks. I hope I was able to lay some good groundwork for you. And like I said, this will be a video series, so please subscribe to follow along with the progress of setting up this tank. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.